welcome to Russell Designs, guys, and in today's video is going to be my first engine teardown. So the engine in question is an ABF. It's a 2-litre 16 valve. It originally came in the Mark III, and it also crossed over into the Passat and into some Seats as well. I think this engine was more or less produced from 94 till around 99 in the Seats. So it almost went to 2000 in the Seats. In the Golf, it actually ended in 97. All right, guys, so let me give you some background onto this engine. This engine is going into my free car, which is just there behind camera. It's a Mark II 1.3 5-door 91 car. I was given the car free, and I said, well, what am I going to do with it? I had bits laying around, a bit like an ingredients for a cake. I thought, let me just use up the ingredients I got around me to make up a nice engine for this daily driver of mine. It's going to be an ABF, so I've got like a 6-speed gearbox, and I've got loads of bits laying around to make a whole ABF engine. So like I said, let me give you some background on this engine. This engine came out of a Mark III Golf. The owner had the engine built. He had Worsner high compression pistons in, had some headwork done with some cams, but the car never run right. Always burnt a lot of oil, always made a knocking noise, and the engine never run right. So the customer was never happy with it. He asked around, and the car ended up going to my good friend Richie at TWR. He was mainly more of a VR6 specialist and an R32 specialist turbocharging those engines. But he can build an engine, and he's a good engine builder. So he was given the car. So Richie didn't want to start from what was done here, because he didn't know what was done. So he wanted to start from scratch, and he actually got the customer a brand new standard ABF block, and then built that up. It was dry sumped, everything. It was really quite a nice car with throttle bodies and stuff. So he had this engine block laying around with high comp pistons and potentially standard rods. I got it for a steal. I thought, hey, at the very worst, the pistons might be good. Let's see, let's take a punt on it at the price that it was. And if it is savable, I've also got some other little trick bits. I've actually got a set of rods to put in it, an uprated sump on it, an oil cooler, head, cams, everything to go on this. So it's going to be a nice little screamer engine, and it'll be running on standalone management with that 6-speed gearbox. It should be a nice little package for this 1.3 Mark II. So after a good jet wash and a clean, I've gotten all that crud of oil and stuff that was on it, and I've removed those 2 knock sensors because ultimately we're not going to be using those. So the ABF block is pretty similar actually to all the other blocks, even the diesel one to a certain degree, especially to the 2-litre 8 valve. So you could actually make a clone using 16 valve bits. If you guys are in the States and you want an ABF tool block, you can actually make a clone. There's a guy in, I think he's in Canada actually, Mystery Garage. He's actually was in the process of making an ABF clone using, I think, 9A bits that you guys had in the States to make an ABF. It's doable. But anyway, back on this. So I've already loosened off the crank pulley bolts. These can be quite prone to working themselves loose with the woodruff and, you know, wearing that off. And I've also loosened the oil pump shaft as well. So as you can see, the piston's actually at TDC, and you can see the deck height of this piston is really quite protruding quite far out of the block. It does have some numbers on this. I will actually double check what compression they are, but they could be anything between 12 and 13 to 1, which is way too high, especially for the cams I'm going to be running. I'm going to be running a fairly mild set of cams, so probably going to be aiming for like 11.5 to 1. I think is a really good compression for milder cams. If you're running, you know, anything like 276 and above, then you could potentially get away with, you know, a 12 and a half, 13 to 1 compression ratio if you're building a real screamer of an engine. But if you're running something, you know, around the 268 cams, 264s, you know, 11.5, you know, gives you a bit of a cushion with standalone management. It should be cool. All right, so the block already came with a few bits missing, like the oil filter housing. I'm gonna have to source one of those, but again, I can take that off almost any block because they're almost all the same. First thing to do is gonna remove this breather. All right, so carefully now I'm going to pry this off, because it is only plastic at the end of the day. I think it just takes like a little O-ring seal in here, so you don't want to break this. Here we go, it's coming. Yep. Okay, that's cool. As you can see, it's not too bad actually. No build-up of burnt oil in there. That's always a good sign. And there you go, that's the intermediate shaft running past the breather. You see as I turn it. And you can see it there again as well. But that looks good in there, doesn't look so bad. Next thing to do is going to remove this 13 for the oil pump. Also, going to have to pry this off. Look all the dirt that's built up over time. It's all going to get, this is all going to be cleaned and detailed, and we'll get all the bolts plated. So, okay, so I'm just going to pry this off again, carefully. Yeah, it's moving. Okay, so I've managed to slowly wedge it out. It's a bit tough, and again, there's another O-ring in there. So I'm just going to try and use a magnet. See if I can pull that gear up. Okay, so I'm going to turn in the gear and pulling it up with the magnet. And there you go. Right. So next is going to be the intermediate shaft. And again, got a seal on here. All right, now, actually with my hand at the back here, I'm going to push. There you go, you see it just comes off. It shouldn't be too tight at all. Careful not to damage these bearings. I'm also going to replace these bearings in here. Let's see the condition of this intermediate shaft. It's got a bit of discoloration, but nothing too bad, no scores. So it definitely hasn't run dry the engine at any point. Okay, that looks in good, fairly good condition. We put that on the shelf, and then we can move on. So next is going to be the front cover. So we've got a couple of 10 mils, and then 3 5mm Allen keys at the bottom. And again, just carefully pry it off. Wow, look at the amount of silicone on this. This is really stuck on here. I don't want to break these tabs really, if I can get away with it. But whoever's built this engine is literally not a great engine builder using this much silicone. It's definitely a no-no. I wouldn't do this. And I'm not even a great engine builder. Here we go. It's silly to go this far with that amount of silicone. Oh, look at that. The amount of silicone on there, that's just so silly. It's just literally caked on in there. I mean, the problem with using this much silicone, as you can see, look, it will just drop inside to the oil. So, I mean, don't do this, guys. It's not the way to do it. Right, so I've wiped off all the stupid excess of silicone that was there. Let's now get into position and actually turn it round so that we can take the sump off. Oh, can you hear that? Did you hear that, guys? That's a sound you never want to hear in a sump. Something's loose inside there. That's only water. Oh, wow. So that's never a good sign. I wonder what I'm going to find underneath here. The ABF and the TDIs have this extra bracket here, which is to hold the O2A gearbox, which is quite nice. And I can see that this is off a late car because it says 96 on this. So it's one of the last engines, really. And you've got these 4 8mm Allen key bolts. Why am I not surprised that one's loose? Okay, so let's quickly gun these off and then we can take the sump off. Now all these bolts, I'm going to get them all, look at the oil in that. I'm going to get all these bolts plated. I think there's someone actually on eBay that used to sell complete engine bolt sets in stainless. That might be an option as well. But I actually might get these anodized in black actually, so they look all stealth. Because that'll be a hint to how this engine is going to look. And as you can see, this is the bracket. Okay, we need to give that a good clean before I put it on the shelf. And again here, I can see a massive excess of silicone sealer on here. I mean, why? All right, guys, so now there's actually 20 of these 5mm Allen key bolts. So let me just speed this up and gun these all off. So now, moment of truth. They're all off. Let me just double check. Yep, they're all off. I'm guessing with this amount of silicone also it's not going to be easy maybe. Or maybe it might be. Oh, there you go. Nothing was holding it. So let's see. 1, if this has got rods, and 2, what was loose inside here. Okay, that's the condition of the sump. Definitely got a lot of burnt oil and carbon build up here. Definitely have had irregular oil servicing. You can see all the burnt oil in here. Again, look at the excess of silicone. This is silly. This is all going to fall into there and block up your pickup of your strainer. I mean, I can see in the strainer actually, there isn't any. So whoever did this was quite lucky. But that's the dangers. Okay, now this windage tray baffle is connected to this, which is the oil strainer pickup for the oil pump. To make my life easier, I'm not going to unclip it. I'm just going to remove these 2 13s and lift up the whole pump with that together. And then just should be literally no resistance, should just literally slide straight out. Okay, I can see why it had a knocking noise. Let me just put this on the bench. All right, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to rotate it round so the nut can fall out, because it is a nut, so you can guess what that's going to be. It's not a bolt, it's a nut. Let's see if it falls out. So there you have it, guys. Here is the nut. And as you may know or may not know, that is from the big end. It's come loose on number 4. Okay, it's not looking good maybe. Hopefully the crank might be damaged. Let's see where we stand. So there you go, it's number 4. And definitely got play in that. Not excessively. Let's see. Well, it's not discoloured, so it doesn't look too burnt. It does look darker than this one, but no darker than, say, number 2 and number 3. But what I'm going to do is I like to start off from 1 to 4. So I'm going to start off there and then leave this to the finale, and let's see if it's damaged the crank or it's damaged the rod. If it has damaged the rod, I have a new rod. I'm going to fit new rods in this anyway. The most important thing is hopefully it hasn't damaged the crank. It may have done, it may not. Let's see what it's done. There's a little bit of scoring, a little bit of wear. I can see there's a line in there where something's got caught, some dirt in the actual cap. There you can see it. So crank number 1 looks really good. Let's pull out the piston. Be careful not to damage the block as you do so. Okay, so next is going to be number 2. Let's rotate this round.
Okay, this looks... Let's get the rag out. Okay, this one looks in better condition than the other one was. Definitely nothing's picked up in there. There's no lines. So that means then the crank's going to be perfect on there as well. Okay, so let's push this one through. Careful not to drop the piston, especially these pistons. There's a bit of water in there. Give this a wipe down. Okay, rings look good. The skirts on the piston look good as well. Very little scoring. You see something's picked up again as well. Someone definitely just been building this in a dirty workshop or something, because it's just got picked up dirt everywhere on this. Again, luckily it hasn't damaged the crank. The crank is actually harder than the bearings. Okay, so that's piston 2 out. So that looks cool. Let's see what number 3 is like. Again, it's a good sign. Bearing came off with the cap. And again, it's picked up a bit of dirt. And the piston also looks good. On the skirt, a few scrapes, but nothing too bad. Maybe because it's been pinking or something, but with dirt that's caused that. But these pistons are super light. Okay, so next. Okay, last and definitely the least, the one with the problem, number 4. Wow, that wasn't even tight. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Well, that's not a good sign. I can't actually remove it. Whoa, the piston literally dropped straight out. Lucky I caught that. Oh my God, there's no piston rings. What? I think maybe actually Richie's taking this apart. Now that makes sense. I think actually Richard took this apart, because there's no way that would have ran like that in the engine. Okay, I see what's happened. Okay, so that's actually perfect then. That means, let me check these bearings. But yeah, that's what's happened. Richie's just removed it to check. There's no way this would have ran like that and the piston not be damaged with no piston rings. That's impossible. Yep, okay, I see what's happened now. Okay, woo. So there was actually nothing to be worried about. And the crank, let me just double check. Oh yes, the crank's in good condition. Now let's turn it round and make sure the bores are in good condition as well. So hopefully you guys can see in here. I'll try and let me turn that off. See if you guys can get a... There you go. As you can see, literally no scoring at all. But as you can see here, the crosshatch is absolutely terrible. It's a straight line, so no wonder it was burning oil. Hopefully you guys can see that if it zooms in. There you go, if it focuses. Do you see, look at that. See the scoring? With the, sorry, can you see the honing that they did? So of course this was going to always have high consumption of oil, because they just didn't know what they were doing. But I'm sure that'll be rectified when I take it to the machine shop. Okay, let's flip this ring back around again and take the crank off. Again, no surprise with this rear main, Silicon City. Unbelievable. Let's get this off. It's not going to come off with the engine stand in place, but at least it'll maybe. No, it won't. But at least I can actually get the crank off with that in there like that. Okay, now it's important with these main bearings to note that they're actually marked 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and also the number is at the back of the block, not the front of the block. It's at the back. So this is very light. Now take off the caps, and the oil actually smells a bit burnt. So let me see what number 1 cap looks like. Oh wow, very little wear at all on that. So that's really cool. Let's hope this continues. Number 2, and again, little to no wear almost. I can't believe it. I mean, this must have been quite a low mileage engine maybe, but that's a good sign. Remove number 4. And again, perfect bearing. That's picked up a little bit of dirt on there, but the crank again. Yep, it's got no signs of any wear on that scoring. Okay, so the last one's number 3, which is the one that holds the thrust bearings. Let me see if I can maybe, by pulling up the crank, get that one to work itself loose. I'm working the crank side to side. There we go. There you go, there's the thrust bearings. And let's see the condition of this, number 3. Slight bit of wear, but not excessive at all. And the crank, again, not scored. So let's lift the crank out, make sure it's fine. That's a heavy bugger. Okay, so I chalk that down as a win. I mean, for the price I got this block for, with those Woolsner pistons, I've got a perfectly good block, good crank. Got to uprate the rods on this, and I've got some other bits and pieces to go on here. Look at the silicon sealer. I mean, this was a disaster waiting to happen with this amount of sealer, and this is on the inside. Okay, so now that we've stripped this down, I'm going to show you some of the goodies that's actually going to go on this block. So I've already put things in a box to go to the machine shop. As you can see, I've removed the standard rods, and there's no wear here at all in the gudgeon pin or anything. So that's, again, really quite happy with that. And the weight of these compared to the standard ones are very, very different. Let me get a standard piston so you guys can see what a standard piston looks like. So there you go, that's what a standard piston looks like. It's flat, it isn't raised like it is on this Woolsner piston. And just the weight, obviously you can't tell that by the video, but these are noticeably lighter, which is good for rotating mass, puts less stress on the bearings and stuff. And it spins up quicker as well as reduces the speed. Obviously this is a standard piston, that's done over 100,000 miles. You can see the little scoring on there, which is quite standard on these really. Let me just take these out so you can see the way I've actually stacked this box. And here are the added bits that was missing off the engine build. Basically a set of rods. So I've got a nice new fresh set of rods to go in there. I've also put the old piston rings in there so they can double check the piston ring size if they need to. They've got all that info there. So this is going to the machine shop first thing tomorrow, and hopefully I should have it by midweek next week, so you might have an update on this fairly soon.
So I was panicking there for a little bit, thinking I maybe didn't get myself a deal, but I dodged a bullet there, and I got myself an absolute bargain of a deal. I got an ABF block, crank, and a set of Woolsner pistons for next to nothing. I won't tell you how much it was. And I had a set of rods laying around, just waiting for a project like this. So pistons, rods, get this all balanced up, get this all done fresh. And as you guys can see, I'm pressing on with Project Freebie. The next teardown video I'm going to do will be the cylinder heads, and I'm also going to be maybe doing a few little slight modifications on the head, not too much, just kind of cleaning up the seat throats and the combustion chamber. So that's definitely worth a watch. And if you want to see more on Project Freebie, it'll be here. And thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe, ding-a-ling-a-ling, click on that notification bell, and be safe.